everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are talking about The World of Tortall by Tamara Pierce. So over the summer last year, I reread all of Tamara Pierce's books that are set in the world of Tortall. So there are multiple series that are set in this world, and it added up to like 17 or 18 books. And I meant to do kind of a wrap up of my reading of all of the Tortall books and kind of reflect on what it was like to reread these books as an adult, because I loved these books as a kid. The Tortall books are the ones that really got me into reading when I was like 11 or 12, and I just they have a special place in my heart. I love them a lot, and I reread them many times as a kid, but this was my first time rereading them as an adult, I think. I can't remember the last time I reread them, so I kind of wanted to do this like reflection on my reading experience, how maybe my experience of these books has changed. But first, if you're unfamiliar with these books and these series, just to kind of introduce what they are. The World of Tortall is a high fantasy world that Tamara Pierce has written multiple series within this world, and they all connect together. She primarily has written them in chronological order, except that there are some prequel books that she wrote later on, but for the most part, publication order is kind of the same as chronological order. So it is a fantasy world that has some definite like ties and similarities to our world. So there are definitely countries that you can kind of see are inspired by different countries in the real world as well. And in these series, we are most often following young women, often starting when they are quite young. A lot of her series kind of age with the characters, starting following them when they're like 10, 11, 12 kind of age, and then aging up with them through their late teens or early 20s. And so most of her books I think would be categorized under YA, but some of them might be middle grade, especially the series that age up with the characters, where it starts with them as like 10 or 11. The first two books might be more middle grade, and then the books kind of age with the characters and become more YA as the characters age as well. So I think we'll just go through each of the series in publication order, because that's the order that I read them, and just kind of chat about what the series is about, what my thoughts were, and maybe how some of my feelings have changed over time about these books. So first up, we start with the Lioness Quartet, the Song of the Lioness Quartet, which is following our main character, Alana. Alana has a twin brother named Tom. They are the children of a noble house, which is the House of Trabond, and they are about to be sent off to begin their schooling. So we start out when they are about probably 10 or 11, and Alana is going to be sent off to the Mithrin priests to be taught magic, and then later be taught how to be a lady. And then her brother is going to be sent to the capital to become a knight. However, neither of them likes this situation. Her brother Tom wants to learn magic, and Alana wants to be a knight, even though at this time in this world, women are not able to become knights. So they devise a plan, and essentially they switch places. Tom goes to the Mithrin priests, and the priests take both boys and girls and then can teach them magic, so he doesn't have any trouble doing that. And Alana disguises herself as Tom's twin brother, Alan, and so she sets off to learn how to become a knight, disguising the fact that she is a girl. And so we are following her as she is going through, the regular trials of being a page and meeting all these new people and fitting in with the other kids and learning, all of both like academically and also learning how to fight and all of this. But along with all of that, also having to disguise the fact that she is a girl, and also when it comes to learning how to fight, she is much smaller than a lot of the other boys, and so she has to be very disciplined and work harder in order to build muscle and build skill so that she can hold her own against them, which she does. In the first book, you know, we're starting out as she is a page, and the series follows her through being a squire and a knight and going on various adventures. Alana also has magic. She has the gift, and the magic in this world can kind of mean a lot of different things. It can do a lot of things, so it's not super like strictly defined, but people do tend to have a certain ability that they are best at or kind of predisposed to, and Alana happens to be very good at healing magic, and this is something that at first, like, she kind of wants to have more of like a warrior's magic, but having healing magic really comes in handy, and she ends up also being favored by a goddess, which gets her into some very dire situations, but definitely creates some great adventures for her where she can really make her name in this world. So this first series, it was such a fun way to like kick off rereading all of these. Alana is a really fun character. She, you know, has a real temper. She's really spunky and determined, and she, you know, is the kind of person who will just tackle any any obstacle in front of her. She will not let anything stop her, anything slow her down. She is determined to reach her goals, and it's really fun to watch her just really take on life, you know, and anything that comes at her. I really love a lot of the characters in this series. You know, she makes a lot of friends as she is training, and you know, you really like the camaraderie between all of the boys who are also learning to become knights, and they just become really great friends, and they're all very endearing. She also has a really great mentor character that comes in, who I really enjoy, and is just one of my favorite like mentor characters in a series, so I really loved his character as well. There are a number of romances in this series, and I feel like it does a little bit fall into this like every like pretty much like every guy who is like a high status guy that she encounters somehow like falls in love with her and is obsessed with her, and she has some kind of relationship with. However, I will say that I liked a lot of the way that those were handled, in that I feel like it didn't really like milk it for angst. I felt like a lot of the, like, even when they got into a situation that may have been a little bit of a love triangle kind of situation, I felt like it was actually handled maybe more maturely than I have seen it handled in a lot of other YA, and the characters were more like thoughtful and mature and emotionally intelligent than I often see in YA when handling these kind of situations. Of course, not perfect. They're all, you know, pretty young and they're learning and growing and all of that. But I still just appreciated that it wasn't overly or excessively dramatic and angsty and all of that. I just felt like it was handled fairly well. One of the other things kind of related to that I always really appreciate about Tamara Pierce's books is that she does talk about like contraception and things in this world. It is a magical contraception where it's pretty much like, wear this magical necklace and you'll be fine, you won't get pregnant. So it's a pretty like simple fix, but honestly, it is better than a lot of other fantasy does, where they just like completely gloss over it and do not address it at all. So I really appreciate that they do at least have some way of addressing this, and they do talk about it, and Alana does, you know, as she's growing up, go and like talk to a healer when she gets her period, and like, you know, it is a conversation, which I just appreciate in a coming of age story for a young girl that was included. I think that there are some elements of this series that didn't age super well, especially around the way that it talks about and handles the vizier, who are clearly inspired by like Middle Eastern cultures, and they do have a culture where women wear face coverings, and there are some ways in which that is addressed, that it's just kind of addressed kind of negatively and kind of coming from a place of assuming that it is oppressive to the women. And I think that Alanna does spend time with the vizier and gets to know them and gets to know some of the women and the girls and more about their culture and you know, how they feel about it. So I think that that is good, but there are certainly times where I feel like it could have been handled better or more sensitively. I have heard though that in more recent editions of this book, or of these books in the series, that Tamara Pierce has included like an author's note saying that, you know, there are a lot of elements such as that, that, you know, if she was writing these books now, because I think they were originally written in like the 80s, but if she was writing them now, she would have handled that differently because her own like knowledge and understanding and opinions about these things have grown and changed over time. So I also appreciate that she has addressed that and said that, you know, she probably would do it differently now, but it is something to be aware of when going into the series. I think that especially in relation to the vizier, there are times where I felt like it can fall kind of into like a white saviorism kind of situation, especially with Alanna's relationship to the vizier and Jonathan's relationship to the vizier and their magic. So there are some elements I think that have not aged particularly well, but as I said, the author has addressed some of them. I only have the older edition, so I haven't been able to actually see the note that I've heard from other people that it is in newer editions. But overall, I think as a like overall story and introduction to this world, the Song of the Lioness quartet is very fun. It does move pretty quickly and does have some time jumps in it, but I feel like you still are able to really get to know these characters and really enjoy them. And I think as characters and as a story, overall, I felt like it does really hold up well over time. So it was very fun to reread this series and a great way to like kick it all off. The next series after this is the Immortals Quartet, which is following Dane. So Dane comes from a small mountain town where her mother was a healer, but they were kind of shunned from society because her mother had a baby out of wedlock, which is Dane. And so people have always been very suspicious of them, and yet they still went to her mother because she was the local healer. But Dane has always had a kind of special affinity to animals and is able to speak with some of them. But at the beginning of the book, we find her kind of out on her own, traveling alone with just her pony Cloud, trying to figure out what to do next and looking for work, looking for safety, when she encounters a woman who is a horse buyer for the Queen's Own, which are certain horse riders and warriors who protect the Queen. And she takes Dane on as an assistant because Dane has a special way with animals. Along the way, we learn that Dane has wild magic, which is a very, like, no one really knows much about it. They find one teacher who may be able to help her, but honestly, he doesn't know that much about it either. It's more that they are kind of working together to figure out how she can harness and control her magic. And then along the way, of course, she kind of gets pulled into various like finding various political machinations and conspiracies and things, and her animals always get involved. We learn more about her magic, and that is one of the most fun parts of it because she has magic that allows her to speak to animals and to heal animals. So as you may imagine, as a kid, this series was my favorite. I loved Dane's series because I mean, I love healing magic and I love animals, and she can talk to animals, and it's like, if you like animal companions, it's like she has so many. She's just constantly talking to animals. She does have some specific ones that she's very close to, but she's also just talking to animals all of the time. And it's delightful. Dane as a character, I think, is a little more quiet than Alana was. She does have a real stubborn streak to her when she, you know, encounters something that she believes is unjust, or especially when she is defending animals. But her character in general is a little more reserved and just very kind and compassionate, and is really wanting to protect and help animals. But, you know, she also wants to help the people around her, and she is more quietly courageous. She will put herself in situations dangerous situations, if she believes that it will help people or help animals. So that is very admirable about her. In this series, we also learn a little bit more about the immortal realms, which is where all of the immortal creatures and the gods live. So that's also very interesting. We get to visit another country in this series, which is Carthage, which is kind of inspired by Egypt, I think. And yeah, it just is a very fun series in that way. I also really love her teacher in this, and I really enjoy the romance that is in this series, although it is a romance that has this series has kind of an age gap romance in it, which is something I don't tend to like, but this is an exception because I just like both of them so much and I like them together. So a little bit of a hypocrite on this one. Rereading this one now, I still really enjoyed it. I mean, I still enjoy all of those elements of like animals and healing, and I still love these characters and everything. I think this is no longer my favorite series, because as much as I think it's more that there are another series that has become more favorite to me, not so much that my enjoyment of this has diminished. Although I will say, this has less of a clear plot, I think, as a series than a lot of the other series in this world, because I think a lot of the characters in other series in this world have a more distinct goal in mind, or more directly involved in what's going on in this world, and whether it's like politics or war or like different, espionage or whatever. They tend to have more focused and like faster moving plots. Not that they're fast paced, but just faster than this series. And the Immortals Quartet feels a little more meandering, and as if these plots are kind of happening to Dane, because she doesn't really have like a distinct goal of like, I want to become a knight, I want to achieve this thing. She just is more so learning about her magic, kind of stumbling into experiences that help her to build these skills, and also then kind of stumbling into situations where she finds out like important information about a conspiracy, and then she helps out with it. So it's a little bit more meandering, a little less focused than some of the others. Okay, so after that is the Protector of the Small Quartet, which is following Kel. So in this series, Kel is the daughter of a noble family who for a long time have been living abroad in another country on a diplomatic mission, and she has recently come back to Tortall in order to become a knight, because at this point women are now able to become knights. However, nobody has done it since Alana, and so Kel is the first woman to like officially go through being a page and a squire and knight and all of that, with everybody knowing who she is. So we're following Kel as she is going through this process and kind of, breaking ground in her own way. Of course, Alana went through this and was the first woman to do this, but Kel is the first one who has to go through this with everyone knowing that she is a girl and the, you know, prejudices that people may hold. And in a lot of ways, she does have to work harder and prove herself because people are assuming she will fail, or assuming that if she succeeds, it is only because people are going easier on her. So she really has to prove that she truly earns whatever she gets. Similarly to Alana's series, we're following Kel through being a page and then a squire and then knighthood. However, her trajectory is very different because Kel doesn't have any magic, and so she is really just like powering through this in a much more like normal person kind of way, and has no magical or goddess assistance like Alana had. As a kid, this was my least favorite series. I really did not like the Protector of the Small series, and I think there are a few reasons for that. One is because Kel didn't have any magic, so I thought that was boring. There also isn't a central romance in this series, which, you know, a lot of the other series have some central romance to them. Kel does have some like romantic partners at different times, but there's nothing that ever is like fully like a core part of her character's arc or story. And then I also didn't like it because later on in the series there comes a villain who is like very creepy. Who as a child I thought it was like very disturbing. But rereading this now, the Protector of the Small series is now my favorite series in the world of Tortall. I loved rereading this, and a lot of it is actually because of the same reasons that I didn't like it before, because like I really liked that there wasn't a central romance, that Kel had other things going on, that she, you know, had other priorities. And it's not that she had no romances, but it was not her main priority throughout the series. And I liked it that she didn't have magic, that she had to really figure things out in a different way than the other characters have had to do. You know, I enjoy magic, obviously, but it was still interesting to see a character, you know, follow a character navigating this world from the perspective of someone who doesn't have magic to help them. Actually, I think another thing that I had not liked about this series as a kid is also that as a character, Kel is more reserved. She is less like, I feel like Alana and Dane both fall into very common like YA protagonist tropes, where you either have the like hot-tempered, spunky, anything you can do, I can do better kind of character like Alana, or you have the very like sweet, compassionate, caring character who is still like quietly brave in her own way. I feel like that is also a common character, and Kel didn't really fall into either of those. She's a very like reserved, thoughtful, methodical character, and I think that I just didn't think she was as exciting as a kid. But now, rereading it as an adult, that was one of my favorite things about her. I just really enjoyed her character. I thought she was so, like, because she's so like thoughtful and self-reflective, I thought that was so interesting about her. One of my favorite things, or some of my favorite parts of the book were when she would really reflect on like, who am I? Like, who do I want to be, and how do I become that person, or how do I act in accordance with the person I want to be? And she would have like very, you know, direct, like, you know, contemplation in her mind about this. And I just like, I love that kind of thing, that sort of like self-reflection, those internal like thought processes. And I loved watching her like really grapple with, who do I want to be? And it came up in different places along the way. It also came up in relation to her romantic relationships, when she would really think back on like, okay, how am I behaving in this relationship? Am I being the person that I want to be, or am I being shallow in the way that I am, you know, engaging in this relationship? So I just really loved that about her. I think there are some aspects of her character that, you know, I still am not totally in love with, just that, you know, she is much more of like a soldier mindset than some of the other characters. One of the other things that I loved about this series in particular, actually two other things. One is the kind of progression of the world in the Protector of the Small series, because, you know, I think that we definitely would learn about this world in the previous two series, and you would see connections between the actions of those series and the next. But I feel like the Protector of the Small series is where the world really expands, and we really start to see like the fallout or the consequences or just the ramifications of the events and the choices of previous series, and we really get to see those come into play. I also feel like this series is some of the best thematic work that Tamara Pierce has done in her world of Tortall. I feel like this is really where she like hit her stride in terms of like themes within a series, especially around this idea of the Protector of the Small. I think that all of these series have like themes and ideas that they are grappling with, but I just feel like the Protector of the Small series does it so much better than all of the other ones. And I love this idea of the Protector of the Small and how core that is to who Kel is as a person. So the Protector of the Small series is now my very most favorite of all of the series in the world of Tortall, which like I never would have expected considering how much I disliked this series as a kid. But taste change, you know? Another example of that is the Trickster duology, which I think actually has another name for the series as well, but I have always called it the Trickster duology because it's called Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen. And in this series, we are following the daughter of one of the main characters of a previous series. I won't tell you who, just in case that would be considered a spoiler, although I don't feel like it would be necessarily. This series is following Allie, who wants to be a spy, and her parents don't want her to be a spy because it's dangerous, but she ends up getting like kidnapped by pirates and sold into slavery on the Copper Isles, who are currently, the Copper Isles were colonized, you know, many years ago, but they are kind of on the brink of revolution. And she is then sold into slavery to a wealthy family, and she is kind of conscripted by the local trickster god, the local patron god of the Copper Isles, who is a trickster god, to help him help his people, help the indigenous people of the Copper Isles kind of take back their land and their power. And essentially, at first at least, her mission is to protect the two oldest daughters of this noble family until I think the end of the summer, because they are needed for this revolution. And so Allie is pulling out all of her spying skills in order to achieve this, and also having to develop some other skills along the way. In this series, we do also get, she gets help from crows, because the trickster god is also, crows are one of his symbols, and so he sends some crows to help her out. There is a crow that turns into a human, which is a trope that I often enjoy as well. And so this duology, when I first read it like years ago. I really enjoyed this series. I really liked Allie as a character. I thought the revolution was really interesting, and I especially loved the crow turned man character who ultimately becomes a love interest for Allie. Rereading this now, I think that this might be my least favorite series. I think that this used to be maybe my second favorite series, and it is now my least favorite. So this is another one where my opinion has wildly changed. And there are, I think, a lot of reasons for it. I feel like I was a lot less engaged in the plot this time around. I found Allie's character much more frustrating, especially in the beginning. She does grow up a lot over the course of the series, but at the beginning, she definitely is the most like bratty teenager kind of. I also don't like the love interest as much as I used to. He used to be one of my favorite love interests, but rereading it now, there are definitely some issues that I have with it. One is just the, like, okay, one of them, this may not bother other people, but just the fact that he is a crow that has turned into a human. As a crow, he is a year old. He has been a human for like, you know, I mean, at the beginning, he like just turned into a human. By the end, he's been a human for maybe a few months or something. And so a lot of their relationship is her like having to explain to him like how human relationships work. And there is something like very, I don't know, there's something kind of uncomfortable about it to me that I'm like, I mean, it's a weird situation because like, I guess crows age differently than humans, and there's also a magical component, but there's also still this like weird age gap element to it. Or even if it's not age gap, it's like a maturity gap or like understand. Like, I just feel like he doesn't fully understand like how human relationships work. And so it feels weird for them to have a relationship. There is some point where like he kind of goes off to on some kind of mission and lives with other humans for a while and comes back, and I think it's supposed to be that he's like matured a lot and learned a lot about like life and being a human and all of that in the time that he was away. Even so, I didn't love it. It was a little uncomfy to me. But also, I had forgotten or didn't realize or whatever when I first read it, but rereading it now, something that really stood out to me was the first time that they sleep together. So for a long time, Allie has been kind of putting him off because she's like, you know, I have other things going on. This is not my top priority. I don't want to even risk getting pregnant because like we are in the middle of a revolution. Like, I cannot, and I am like, you know, a core player in this. I cannot deal with that right now. And I'm like, that is, I mean, she should be able to obviously just be able to be like, no. But also I'm like, if you need reasons, which she doesn't, but like if she did, those are very legit reasons. And he keeps pressuring her because to him as like a crow, he's like, oh, but you know, if you're my mate, then we have to sleep together because that is like the only way that you can communicate real commitment, which I don't love. And then later on, so he's like pressuring her about this. And then the first time that they sleep together, essentially she is like saying no, and then he's like, no more excuses, this is happening. And he brings, you know, one of their like magical contraceptive necklaces, so at least the concern about getting pregnant isn't an issue anymore. But essentially, like, she never fully agrees to it. She just says she's saying no, and he's like, nope, I have this, you know, contraceptive necklace, you have no more excuses, this is happening. And then they sleep together. And like, also, I don't like the way that that was handled. I don't know, there are a lot of elements of the way that relationships were handled in this that I just like really, I really didn't like, and also felt very out of the norm for how relationships have been handled in previous series in this world. So it just felt very weird and out of place to me. There were also some conversations, especially around this like revolution and the I don't know, the relationship between the people who colonized the Copper Isles and the people who are indigenous to it. There are a few conversations that are not necessarily like really prominent ones. They're kind of like very brief moments, but there were a few like moments and comments in these conversations that I was a little bit uncomfortable with the way that they handled it. So there are a lot of both like large and small elements of this series that made me just enjoy it a lot less. Some of the ways that like the revolution was handled, the relationships were handled, and then also I just felt some of the characters were less engaging, the plot was less interesting than I remembered it being. So this is now my least favorite series in the world of Tortall. So that was a real switcheroo for me. And then after that, the last series that I read was the Beka Cooper trilogy, which is the prequel series. So the Beka Cooper trilogy is about like the ancestor, she's like the great grandmother of a character that we have met in previous series. And Beka lives in Chorus, which is the capital city in Tortall, and she is one of the Chorus dogs, which is essentially like their city police. And she like solves crimes. This whole series is essentially like different mysteries, and she solves crimes. And so we're following her from what they call puppyhood, which is being a trainee, up through being a dog. And she kind of creates a reputation for herself as being somebody who, you know, when she like finds a mystery, she like will not let go, which is why the first book is called Terrier, because when she gets her teeth into something, she doesn't let go. And then, you know, she kind of gets this reputation as someone who can like solve these complex crimes that other people may have either ignored or may not have been able to really completely track down. But she gets these kind of increasingly important mysteries to solve. She also does have some magic of her own, specifically that she is chosen by the god of death. And so she is able to hear ghosts, and the way that she hears ghosts is that ghosts ride on the backs of pigeons. So pigeons are the god of death's messengers, and they carry souls who have not found a resting place. And so Beka is able to listen to these ghosts, and that is one of the things that helps her to solve these crimes and track down like who is killing these people. And so she spends a lot of time feeding birds, trying to talk to their ghosts. She also has you know, other dogs who are her partners that she works with, and I really enjoyed their characters as well, and the friendship and like mentor relationship, or she's the mentee, but the relationship that she builds with them. I think that in this series there was clearly like, I liked the first book the best, and I think part of that is because of kind of a high stakes nature to the mystery that she's solving, because it is about like people, there are children who are being kidnapped, and there are people who are mysteriously disappearing and being murdered, and she is the only one who cares about it. The second book is more about like counterfeit money, like tracking down people who are creating counterfeit money, and so it just was like less intense, you know, as a mystery. Like, it's still obviously important, but just I don't know, it felt like less high stakes than the first one. And then the third book kind of comes back around to being high stakes because a member of the royal family has been kidnapped, and so she has to help find him. This series, though, I really liked Beka's character. I'm not sure exactly where I would rank this one. This might be, this would either be my second or third favorite series at this point. And I'm not exactly sure where it would go in the lineup, but another one that I remember when Beka Cooper series first came out, I was not that into it, but rereading it now, I just really enjoyed it. And I feel like it had more similarities to the Kell series than to some of the other ones. And so I think maybe my taste has changed, that now, you know, Kell and Beka Cooper are some of my favorites. So I think, I'm trying to think how I would rank these now. I know that Protector of the Small, following Kell, is like my number one, and the Trickster duology that follows Allie is like my very bottom, my least favorite. And then I don't know about the other three. I think that it would go Kell, Beka Cooper, Alana, then Dane, then Allie, but that seems kind of unfair to put Dane as second to last because I still really enjoyed it. Like, I feel like it goes Kell, and then Beka Cooper and Alana are kind of on like the same level, and then Dane is maybe slightly below them, and then there's a big gap, and then there's Allie, because I really disliked that. Because I didn't dislike Dane's series, I just liked the other ones more, so it feels unfair to put it as like second to last. So there's a gap in between. Anyway, so that concludes my reflection on my reread of Tamora Pierce's World of Tortall. There is one book that I left out, which was Tempest and Slaughter, which is another prequel book following Numair, who is a character that we meet in some of the other series, and I love Numair. He is one of my favorite characters in this world. But I didn't reread that one because it is the first book in a series that is incomplete. And I know that I'm hoping that she does complete the series sometime soon. And when she does, I will reread the first book in order to continue on. But I didn't want to reread it now since I knew it wasn't gonna go anywhere, at the moment at least. Anyways, I would love to know if you have read Tamora Pierce's any of the books in the world of Tortall. Did you also grow up with these books, or did you discover them later on? Do you have any favorites? How would you rank them? Or if you've never read any of them, do you think that you're going to read them? I would love to know. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.